All right, so welcome to the deep dive where we take those sources you sent us and try to pull out, the good stuff, the insights that really stick with you
Yeah.
and make you feel, like you actually learned something without being totally overwhelmed.
Right. Right.
Today we're diving into this really interesting piece you shared called Balu's story.
It's a really lovely piece. It's a personal account about the author's cousin Balu and his kind of knack for finding the positive side
Yeah.
and having these sort of, unexpected perspectives on everyday things.
Exactly. And it really stuck with you, the listener, right? Like,
Hmm.
the person who's always looking to learn and kind of connect the dots between things. So our mission today in this deep dive is to kind of figure out, what's at the heart of Balu's outlook
Right.
and see what kind of practical wisdom you can actually take away from his experiences and apply to your own life.
I think what's so cool about this piece is that it really shows us Balu through all these interactions, and we get to see his mind at work. You know, how he thinks and how he affects the people around him. It's more than just funny stories. There's a real depth to it.
Okay, so let's dive right in.
Yeah.
The author starts by saying that, Balu might not be seen as this extraordinary person or anything,
Right.
but he is definitely special because he can always see the lighter side of
Hmm.
any situation, no matter how tough it is.
Uh-huh.
And she even mentions feeling like life seems simpler after talking to him.
Hmm.
So, what are your initial thoughts on that aspect of Balu, this core trait?
Well, I think what's so striking right away is his ability to kind of simplify these complex situations by just shifting his perspective a bit.
Yeah.
It suggests a mind that doesn't immediately jump to the negative, but kind of actively looks for other ways to interpret things.
Hmm.
It's like what psychologists call cognitive reframing, where you consciously try to view something from a different angle,
Oh, interesting.
which can be hugely beneficial for managing stress and building resilience.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And then we see this reframing in action almost immediately with the story of the worried bank employee.
Right.
This friend gets transferred to a village and he's naturally anxious about what this means for his family, his kids' education, his career. Pretty big stressors there.
Oh, yeah, he's probably looking for empathy and maybe some practical solutions.
Right.
But then Balu's response is so unexpected, it's laughter.
Yeah.
And, I mean, on the surface, that might seem a little insensitive,
Yeah,
but it kind of sets the stage for his unconventional approach.
it totally does. So Balu then goes on to reframe the whole situation, right? He suggests that the friend should actually be happy about the transfer,
Right.
arguing that the kids will be better cared for and even better educated by their grandparents,
Uh-huh.
which kind of taps into certain cultural values around the role of extended family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a cultural context here about grandparents, but I think
Ooh.
even beyond that, Balu's actively searching for the advantages
Mm-hmm.
in what this friend sees as a completely negative change.
Right.
He's not dismissing the difficulties, but he's pointing out these potential upsides
Mhm.
that the friend hadn't even considered.
Yeah, and he even brings the author Sudha into it, right? Pointing out that the fresh air and the chance to take long walks in the village would be amazing for her health.
Yeah.
It's like he's determined to find a positive angle for everyone involved.
It really is. It's a great example of how to find a win-win, even when the initial situation seems really tough.
Right.
His comment about temporary separation leading to a lot more respect.
Yeah.
And so based on his own experience, that adds a bit of humor,
Yeah.
but also hints at the potential benefits of little distance in relationships sometimes.
That's so Baloo. And it's remarkable that the friend actually felt better after this conversation.
Yeah.
Really highlights how powerful a shift in perspective can be.
Mm.
Even just a slightly humorous or unexpected viewpoint can totally change our emotional landscape.
Exactly how we interpret things has such a profound impact on how we feel. And I don't think Balu was laughing to belittle the friend's worries, but rather to kind of break up that negative thought pattern
Yeah.
and introduce the possibility of a totally different reality.
So next we have Baloo's ready-made consolation for failing exams.
Okay.
This is a perspective you don't hear every day.
Right.
He argues that some failures are essential for growth and maturity,
Mhm.
and that too much success can actually lead to arrogance.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I think it's a really interesting challenge to this constant pressure to succeed.
Right.
Balu's suggesting that setbacks aren't just inevitable, but they're actually crucial for developing character.
Mm-hmm.
And this lines with the idea of a growth mindset, where challenges are seen as opportunities to learn
Hmm.
rather than as signs that you're not good enough.
And then comes the typical encouragement, try and try and try again.
Right. Yeah.
Immediately followed by the very Balu-esque, don't fail next time, start studying now. Yeah. It's this blend of acceptance and a gentle nudge towards taking responsibility.
It's a perfect example of his pragmatic optimism. You
Yeah.
know, he acknowledges the value of perseverance, but also emphasizes the importance of being prepared.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how the parents and the students react differently to that.
Hmm.
The students who have actually experienced failure probably find his perspective more relatable and less judgmental.
It makes sense in the context of learning. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about Balu's approach to feeling cheated,
Okay.
which is illustrated through his cousin Prasad.
Right.
This guy Prasad is constantly feeling like he's being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So how does Balu tackle this constant complaint?
Well, he uses this really insightful analogy. He describes someone complaining of pain all over their body.
Okay.
But when asked to point to the pain, they touch everywhere with just one finger.
Oh, interesting.
So Baloo's interpretation is that the pain isn't actually widespread, it's just in the finger.
Yeah.
And he connects this directly to Prasad, suggesting that this feeling of being cheated might be coming from Prasad's own perception, rather than the actions of everyone around him.
Mhm.
Like Baloo says, you have a problem, not others.
That's a very direct and maybe even challenging perspective to hear, right?
Yeah.
It suggests that sometimes our own biases or a tendency to see ourselves as victims can really color our interactions
All right.
and lead to a distorted view of reality.
Exactly. It encourages us to shift from blaming others to looking inward.
Right.
And that kind of self-reflection is key for emotional regulation
Right.
and for overcoming feelings of resentment and helplessness.
Okay, so the author then gives us a broader picture of Balu's personality. We learn that he's a captivating storyteller,
Yes.
often losing track of time and incredibly popular with children.
Mm-hmm.
He has his quirks, though, right?
Uh-huh.
A tendency to exaggerate and not exactly known for being punctual.
Right.
But he's also portrayed as genuinely good-hearted, and he loves connecting with people.
Yeah, he's a very relatable character. I think his popularity with kids probably comes from his imaginative nature
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a more relaxed approach to time, which kids often appreciate.
And then there's that wonderfully self-deprecating comment about his children's success.
Right?
They've done well because I did not help them in studies.
Shows a great sense of humor
Yeah.
and maybe a deeper understanding that sometimes the best support is giving others the space to figure things out on their own.
Right, that kind of humility and ability to laugh at yourself is a sign of strong self-awareness.
Yeah.
It stops him from coming across as arrogant or too preachy.
Even when he's giving unconventional advice.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on to the legendary U.S. trip and the prearranged shirt pulling.
Right.
We hear that Baloo has a story for every place he's been,
Yeah.
often requiring a pinch of salt.
Right.
So when his son invites him and his wife to the U.S. for a year, it's a huge event for their village.
Yeah, considering how few people in their community have traveled internationally, Baloo's trip would definitely generate a lot of interest.
Yeah.
The author does a great job of contrasting those generic descriptions other travelers give.
With the anticipation of Baloo's inevitably detailed and probably embellished account.
Totally. And Sudha, knowing Baloo's tendency to exaggerate, has that brilliant pre-trip conversation with him,
Right.
cautioning him about his uncontrolled tongue and the skepticism of the villagers who have seen a more realistic America on TV.
Yeah.
So they come up with this agreement
Right.
that she'll pull on his shirt to signal him
Right.
when he starts to stray too far from reality.
Which is such a funny and clever strategy.
Yeah.
It acknowledges his storytelling style,
Right.
but gives him a way to bring it back down to earth.
With a little nudge from Sudha.
Exactly.
So Baloo starts describing New York City's skyscrapers, but
Yeah.
then a villager immediately shifts the focus to agriculture,
Right.
curious about their farming practices and how their grass compares. This is where the embellishment really takes off.
Okay.
The grass goes from almost 5 feet tall to
Mhm.
very thin, and then as thin as a hair's width, all in quick succession. Punctuated by these shirt pulls from Sudha,
So funny.
it's a perfect illustration of Baloo trying to balance his storytelling flair with factual accuracy.
Right.
And the villager's practical interest provides this humorous anchor to reality,
Yeah.
highlighting the contrast between Baloo's imaginative descriptions and the everyday concerns of his community.
Then there's Sudha's final exasperated shirt pull that ends up tearing his shirt.
Oh no.
It's the perfect comedic climax.
It is.
But the villagers' concluding thought is really insightful.
Yeah.
After all, it is Baloo's version of America. The real America must be different.
Mm-hmm.
They understand they're getting Baloo's subjective experience, not a documentary.
Right. It shows a real acceptance and understanding within the community. They're not necessarily fooled, but they appreciate Baloo's enthusiasm and how entertaining his stories are.
Hmm.
They're willing to engage with his version of reality, knowing his tendencies.
Then we see a more vulnerable side of Baloo when his usually quiet wife gets seriously ill with a high fever.
And despite his constant chatter, he gets easily scared in these kinds of situations.
Yeah.
And calls Sudha in distress.
Right.
I mean, this moment really humanizes Balu.
Hmm.
His outward humor and confidence don't negate his capacity for worry,
Hmm.
especially when it involves someone he cares about.
Right.
And his wildly exaggerated temperature estimate of 500 degrees
Oh my God.
is almost a comical manifestation of his fear.
Yeah.
And maybe a lack of understanding about medical realities.
Right.
Sutha's calm correction and her humorous suggestion to call a firefighter injects some levity into the situation.
Yeah.
And the more realistic expected temperature brings things back into perspective.
Right.
It's a reminder that even those who often live in the realm of exaggeration have genuine emotions,
Hmm.
even if they express them in their own unique way.
It also highlights the supportive relationship Baloo has with the author.
Yeah.
Someone he trusts and turns to when he's genuinely concerned.
Okay, so finally we get to what might be the most profound lesson Baloo imparts.
All right. During the encounter with the stranger seeking help from the Infosys Foundation,
Okay.
Sutha intends to donate later, but Baloo strongly advises against it.
Right.
So what's the reasoning behind his urgency?
Baloo's reasoning is actually really profound.
Yeah,
He emphasizes how uncertain life and time are.
right.
His questions. Do you know what may happen tomorrow? Will you remember your promise? Life is uncertain. Anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
They highlight the importance of acting in the present moment.
Yeah.
His point is about how immediate the need is
Right.
and how unforeseen circumstances could prevent those good intentions from actually being realized.
Oh, okay.
This really aligns with philosophical ideas about the preciousness of the present moment.
His practical suggestion to always carry a checkbook and cash for such opportunities shows that his wisdom isn't just abstract.
Right.
It's grounded in a real understanding of how to act on your compassion.
It's a powerful lesson in not delaying acts of generosity.
And Baloo, who might be easily dismissed as just a comical figure, actually reveals a deep understanding of human vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
and the importance of seizing the moment to help others.
Sutha's realization that he was more than just an uneducated, hilarious comic man really underscores how much wisdom we can find in unexpected people.
Right.
So looking back at all these stories, what are the core insights we can take away from Baloo's unique way of navigating the world?
Well, I think several key themes emerge.
Right.
First, the transformative power of perspective.
Mm.
His ability to find the positive and reframe challenges. That's a valuable tool for all of us.
Yeah.
Second, the role of humor in diffusing difficult situations and building connections.
Right.
Third, the crucial importance of acting in the present, especially when it comes to kindness and generosity.
Uh-huh.
And finally, the fact that profound wisdom can often be found in the most unexpected sources.
Despite his quirks and occasional embellishments, Baloo ultimately enriches the lives of those around him. With his unique perspective and often surprisingly insightful observations, he reminds us that there's more than one way to look at things.
Absolutely. He challenges us to not take life so seriously all the time
Yeah.
and to look for the potential for good, even in the midst of difficulties.
Right.
And even though his interactions are often lighthearted, they frequently lead to genuine learning
Mm-hmm.
and a deeper understanding of human nature.
So to you, our listener,
Mm-hmm.
think about something in your own life right now.
Yeah.
Maybe a worry you're carrying or a situation where you feel stuck in a particular viewpoint.
Right.
What would Baloo's lighter side take be?
Hmm.
What unconventional advice might he offer?
Yeah.
And how could considering his perspective potentially shift your understanding of the situation?
This deep dive into Baloo's story encourages us to value diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
And to recognize that profound wisdom isn't limited to formal education
Yeah.
or conventional thinkers. There's often a wealth of insight to be gained from simply paying attention to the unique ways in which everyday people navigate the complexities of life.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Baloo's story.
It's been a pleasure.
And thank you to our listeners for sending us this truly thought-provoking piece.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
Until next time, stay curious.
And keep diving deep.
Bye for now.
Bye.